All right, live stream manager, are we live? Looks like we are. Okay. Howdy, everyone. Good evening. My name is Marco Rantia. Good evening, Texas Democrats, and welcome to the penultimate official TDP chair candidate forum, which is in a series of 5 official forums approved by the governing body of the Texas Democratic Party, the State Democratic Executive Committee, known as the SDEC. This is a sole official virtual forum and is regionally focused on the border and South Texas regions. I am Party Business Advisor Marco Rantia and your timekeeper for tonight. I'm representing the Texas Democratic Party for this forum, and along with me here off camera representing TDP2 is our live stream manager and Deputy Digital Director, Ana Hernandez. Both Ana and I are born and raised El Pasoans, proudly representing the city of the 915, although we're coming to you a little less than 600 miles away from El Paso, live from the capital city of Austin. Our co-sponsors for tonight's South Texas and Border Forum, virtual forum, are the Hispanic Caucus and its organizations, the Indigenous Peoples Caucus, and the dozens of county parties from the Coastal Bend, South Texas Plains, Big Bend Country, and southern portions of Hill Country. To our audience watching the live stream on YouTube, please take the time out right now to click on subscribe to get YouTube notifications for the Texas Democratic Party and give this video a like. Again, click on the bell to subscribe for notifications and click on thumbs up to give us a like. All right, now let me introduce our 2 moderators for tonight, each from tonight's caucus co-sponsors, the Hispanic Caucus and Indigenous Peoples Caucus, Eric Olguin and Kristen Henge. Eric Olguin is an RGV native and earned his undergraduate degree from Texas A&M Corpus Christi before moving to New York City, where he worked for a U.S. Congresswoman and the New York City Comptroller. In 2017, he returned to South Texas, becoming active in his community and Texas politics. He led a Texas LULAC chapter, successfully fought legislation erasing minority civil rights icons from textbooks, and was part of the small team that got the PACT Act signed into law, the biggest veteran health care bill in 45 years that has now helped over 3 million veterans across the United States, earning an invitation to the White House by President Biden. A graduate of the LBJ School of Public Affairs at UT Austin, Eric now leads Texas policy and advocacy work for a national Hispanic civil rights organization, advocating for Latinos communities statewide. Kristen Henge is the secretary of the Indigenous Peoples Caucus and has worked and volunteered with political campaigns at the statewide, congressional, county party, mayoral, and school district levels. Mrs. Henge studied chemistry, geology, and art at the University of Minnesota, where she worked as a student junior scientist in the St. Anthony Falls Laboratory. This led to seasonal work at the Great Sands Dune National Park in Colorado, and later studying geology at the University of Texas Permian Basin in Odessa, Texas. Mrs. Henge lived and raised a family in West Texas for about 10 years, where she entered political activism and currently resides in Houston, Texas. So let's give it up for our moderators, Kristen Henge and Eric Olguin. Kristen?
Thank you, Marco. Welcome, everyone. As you heard, my name is Kristen Henge. I'm with the Indigenous Peoples Caucus, and I'm based in Harris County. And Eric Holgen is from the Hispanic Caucus, and he's based in Hidalgo County. We will both be your moderators today. Our candidates with us for the Texas Democratic Party chair are Steve Miller, Misha Ben David, Kendall Scudder, Delia Parker Mims, Aaron Arguello, Patsy Woods Martin, Mary Gomez, and Lily Schechter. Welcome, Texas Democratic Party chairs. Candidates. Eric, can you get us started by going over the ground rules and format?
Yeah, of course. So responses to the questions will all be no longer than 60 seconds. Please complete your remarks when the time is up, or you may be muted if you go over. Questions will be asked in a rotating order of candidates, and the questions are sourced from our co-sponsors, the county parties, and the caucuses, and from the question form that was circulated online prior. After the questions are complete, we will have closing statements. And regarding rebuttals, as the moderators, we are allowed to give a candidate a 30-second rebuttal if a candidate is name checked, but only if we give a candidate permission to do so, because we may need to be moving along if needed to get through more questions. So let's start with the opening question. For all candidates, remember, the answers have a 60-second limit. So first question, looks like we're starting with Steve Miller. What is the most important lesson you have learned on the campaign trail running for TDP chair?
I would say the personality. The caucuses have different personalities. People have different personalities, and being able to negotiate and have conversations with such a wide variety of people has been very, very difficult. But throughout my time of campaigning, I've learned how to navigate those, right? I've learned how to navigate them. I've learned how to discern and fish out the things that they're saying that they deem are important, and how to interact with that and incorporate that into my way of doing things. So I would say just dealing with the different personalities and learning how to be successful in navigating those personalities is the thing that has really been the thing that has really stuck out to me.
Great. Kendall?
To me, one of the things that I've learned, the biggest thing I've learned is kind of the philosophical and ideological diversity of this state. I always kind of knew it, right? And in my time, 23 years as an activist in this party on all different levels, I've been all over the state. In the last election, I put more than 35,000 miles on my pickup, driving around and trying to be helpful. And even me, who's put that much time out in the field, I'm learning every time I go to a new place that you can't just boil this state down into rural, urban, and suburban, because even the rural areas aren't the same, right? We kind of have this monster that all of us are signing up to try to tackle here. And to me, it's just, I never cease to be amazed by the resilience of Texas Democrats, but also just how diverse the realm of fight they have is. And they're all fighting different wars on different fronts, and they need different things. And I don't feel like as a party we've always focused in on that, and I hope that we can try to advance our party forward towards doing that.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Delia?
Oh, you want to unmute?
I'm gonna try not to do that all night. First, I want to acknowledge I am in Louisville, and so I'm currently in the land of the Caddo and Tonkawa peoples, and that is what we call the location that I'm at. What I've learned the most and throughout this is that we have a long way to go as a party for us to become one team and get to one commonality. So it's going to really take strong leadership and committed direction to try to get all of us Texans, because it is so diverse, to get on the same page and to become one team.
Perfect. Aaron?
I've learned the transition between talking to voters and then talking to people who already know what they're doing in the party is a completely different behemoth of an animal. And so that, along with just going around and meeting all the different representatives, SDCs from Texas, is kind of humbled me and helped me become more of a listener, even though I felt like I was already one. And it's just being able to accommodate the job of the TDP is a tremendous one. It's a lot more than just, what goes on in the background. Even with the great team that the TDP has, I think that being able to speak to and try to acknowledge everyone has been one of the greatest learning experiences that I've had.
Thank you for that. Ms. Patsy, you're up next.
Thank you, Eric and Kristen. And yes, I would want to acknowledge that I am talking to you from the home of the Wichita, Kiowa, and Comanche tribes. I have been reminded of many things as I've been involved in this campaign, how unique each community is. As Kendall said, how the issues, though similar, are unique in each community. I'm also reminded of how hard Democrats are working across this state. And how they just need a little more support to be more effective, and how seriously these SDEC members are taking their jobs. They want to listen to their constituents and vote according to their communities. It has been an honor to be on this trail.
Thank you for that. Ms. Mary Gomez, you're next.
Hello, everyone. Well, I am coming to you live from the Rio Grande Valley, in one of the locations where I spend a lot of my time studying and raising my children, and that's inside of a Burger King playhouse. I'm here waiting for my kids. They're in a doctor's office nearby, and so I'm always spending my time with my children, but always thinking about what their future is going to look like. And so what I learned on the campaign trail for US Senate is what I continue to learn on the campaign trail for Texas State Chair. And that is that there are so many Democrats out there really giving their all for the Democratic Party, and we need to reciprocate that. We need to be there for them in every type of nationality, region, and religion. And so I'm looking forward to the Democratic Party being that beacon of light for hope for all us Democrats who really just want to help the immigrants and make a change. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And last but not least, Ms. Lily Schechter.
Thank you so much, Eric and Kristen, for hosting this forum tonight. And thank you to everybody that is taking the time to watch it. My name is Lily Schechter, and I am running for TDP chair. And I've been traveling the state over the last couple months, talking to people all over the state in different cities and communities. And one of the things that I found to be the most exciting thing as we travel the state is there are Democrats in every part of the state who want to be involved in the state Democratic Party, who want to be a part of the party, and who want to be heard and appreciated and really have it's the commonality that we have. I'm from Harris County, the largest county in the state, where we have a huge thriving Democratic community. And here, just as in Taylor County and Lubbock County, people want to be involved in the party and they want to find their Democratic community. So I think that I've learned the most and love the most about being out on the campaign trail is that we're all like-minded and want to be doing the work together.
Great. Thank you for all your responses. Next question, and Lily, we're going to be starting with you. State and national Democrats continue to underinvest in South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, and throughout the border region. These are places where we are losing ground at the ballot box. So how will you ensure that real resources are directed to organizing, outreach, and infrastructure in these regions?
So one of the things I talk a lot about, Eric, is that when I become state Democratic Party chair, I want to do a 360-degree evaluation of all the work that we're doing around the state. And part of that is having real honest conversations about what we're doing and we're not doing. We talk a lot about how people in certain areas and certain communities across the state, especially the Valley, don't turn out. But the reality is we have not been spending enough resources or working in the Valley. And there are a lot of great people that are already doing work on the ground. So making sure that we partner with local leaders like Chairman Gonzalez in Hidalgo County and Cameron County, and make sure that we are working with our elected officials down there to not only bring resources to the area, but we start doing it now leading up to the 2026 election. And we partner with people that are doing work on the ground, like Project Bravo, which is going to be registering voters in Hidalgo County. We make sure that we are at the table with the other organizations at the ground, and we prioritize it from the very beginning to say it's not just a stat that we're losing this election because people aren't coming out to vote. We're going to invest the resources in the area starting immediately.
Thank you for that. Reverend Steve Miller. You're on mute.
All right. All right. I'm not exactly sure how Hispanics in general have gotten lost down in the Rio Grande Valley, or for that matter, across the entire state of Texas. Hispanics are the #1 largest ethnic group in the state of Texas. And how that ethnic group has been marginalized, I have no clue. I think the current leadership of the party has fumbled that particular focus. And so we need to get back to that focus, especially in the rural areas. In the rural areas, there are 4.5 million Hispanics. And I call the Rio Grande Valley part of the rural areas because it's outside of the major metropolitan areas like Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. So being that we have this numerical advantage amongst Hispanic people, I think that definitely needs to be a focus.
Thank you, Mr. Scudder.
I think it's important to point out, not only are we as Democrats underinvesting in that region, Republicans are investing and they're showing up. And I don't know that I honestly don't think that we've spent the energy that we should in making sure that we're putting not only those resources there, but the manpower and the star power down there too. I get kind of tired of every time that we have some big name coming to Texas, they're coming to Austin, they're coming to Houston, right? It'd be great to be able to get those folks places where we could actually get some energy kind of infused into our grassroots down there. We should be investing in regional hub offices. We should be investing to make sure that we have all of our comms that's done in both Spanish and in English, and not in this weird halfway thing. We should have a full-fledged Spanish language comms department, right? Because when 30% of your state speaks Spanish at home, if you aren't having a Spanish language comms department, you're missing 30% of the state, right? So to me, it's not just that we have underperformed it, it's that the Republicans are actively doing it. And that's why we're losing the trust of the people on the ground there. And we have to be committed to earning it back.
Thank you, Kendall. Ms. Parker-Mims.
Oh, you can unmute.
I think it's going to be pretty much the same. Not only are we not engaging in the Rio Grande Valley, in fact, I think the Rio Grande Valley is such a perfect example of how we can't blame anybody else but ourselves. Because the Rio Grande Valley was our blue wall, it flipped, and everything that they voted against, the Republicans are going to hurt. So it was our fault for not engaging, not messaging, not working with the local chambers, not working with the local leaders, not bringing people down there to tell them what we're fighting for. They have twice the rate of people who do not have health insurance as the rest of the state, yet it's the Democrats who are trying to fight to expand Medicaid. We missed that mark. The other thing is, when we were down there, I took the time to talk to people there to just see what they were thinking, not debate. I wanted to know, how could you vote against yourself? I talked to a young lady in her 20s who said, I was a Democrat, but she voted Republican. She doesn't believe that we possess the same values that she possesses anymore. So I think we got to get to those issues that bring us all together. And I believe that's economic.
Thank you for that. Mr. Aaron Arguijo.
Well, we took the vote for granted. I happen to know that down in Edinburgh, there's a brick and mortar office that doesn't even get used, but it's there. It's empty and it's used it's for the Republican Party. And like Kendall said, they are investing buku's amount of money into that area, in which we are not. Two things matter more than anything down in the valley, and that's going to be the border wall, and that's going to be the economy. Now we know that this inflation was created because of COVID-19, but to a regular voter, they don't want to hear that. It happened under Joe Biden's watch. So what are we doing to channel that messaging that we didn't create it, or that we're more worried about the blue collar workers that are working down in the valley? So I think that having representation, spending money, being there, having a constant presence, even with the TDP chair being there constantly, announcing it on social media for groups to know that we're down there and we're working and we need to be present.
Thank you, Ms. Patsy Woods Martin.
Yes, Eric. You know, the largest shift to the right in the 2024 election was among Hispanic voters, and that ranged from 5 to 15% in counties across the state. So what can we do about this? One, we can make sure that Hispanic and Tejano leaders are listened to as statewide coordinated plans are made. Two, we can invest in a democratic version of the Libre initiative. And I've asked our SDEC members to develop a plan for what that would look like in Hidalgo County alone. We can increase voter registration in our voter counties. There's a large population of eligible voters who are not registered. We can work with our allies to do that. Those who will share data with us, we can work with county parties. There are a couple of other things we can do, but at all this points to the requirement to work with our leaders on the border, build and fund a plan for year-round organizing.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Mary Gomez.
Hello. So I think here in South Texas, we missed the mark. And I'm just going to let y'all know, no amount of money is going to win a race down here. The Republicans are spending a lot of money, but it's unfortunate that a lot of people are working both sides. And so I don't think more money is going to help us. I think what we need to do as a Democratic Party is bring candidates that are going to motivate people to get out and vote. We need to find people who are colorful, bright, well-oriented, and part of the culture down here. So that way we can inspire people to go vote. No amount of money is going to make them vote. And so we need to make sure that the Democratic Party finds good candidates to run. We don't need boring candidates like some of the ones that are in office right now, but we're gonna find new candidates.
Great. Thank you all candidates. Kristen?
Thank you, Eric. The next question. Trump's administration and the Republican Party are helping the wealthiest and most privileged Americans by giving them tax cuts, paid for by taking away social services and life-saving medical funding from many Americans. If elected as state chair, how would you respond? Mary Gomez?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. Trump's administration and the Republican Party are helping the wealthiest and most privileged Americans by giving them tax cuts, paid for by taking away social services and life-saving medical funding from many Americans. If elected as state chair, how would you respond?
So for the state of Texas, it's really hard to deal with federal tax issues. But one of the things that I had been talking about is we need to create a corporate tax for the state of Texas that will help offset certain underfunding. And so corporations need to start paying their fair share for existing here in the state of Texas. Whatever Trump does on the federal level, we're not going to really be able to do much here on the state level, but we need to definitely start challenging the corporate tax calculation with the state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Next, we have Lily Schechter.
Yeah, I think that thank you for putting the question in the chat. It's super helpful for us to have the question. But I would say that we need to make sure if we're talking about the Trump administration working for the wealthiest few and the Abbott administration doing the same thing, we need to make sure that we hold corporations accountable and we make sure that corporations pay their fair tax rate, because you and I both pay our fair tax rate, but corporations should be absolutely held to the same standard as individuals when it comes to the corporate tax rate. So I appreciate you asking that. If I was state party chair, I would do one of the things that I think the state party is working on right now is April 5th. We're doing a protest in Austin to make sure that that Abbott and Patrick know that we do not believe that we should be losing social services or any kind of funding, or any of our programs should be should be threatened from the federal level or the state level, and we need to protest and protest and protest to make sure that we are pushing back for the next election cycle, because our focus is the way Trump administration is going to hear us is by winning at the ballot box and making sure that we win in 2026.
Thank you, Lily. Next candidate is Steve Miller.
All right. Well, in my work in East Texas and in politics for the last several years, I've learned that many people who are citizens and voters don't know how to engage their representatives. If you want something out of your representatives, you have to go see them. I think we have to do some very practical things with the people that we represent. We can teach them how to call the representatives and talk to them on the phone, provide them with a phone script. We can teach and show them where their offices are, practice with them of how to engage their representatives when they go talk to them. The next thing you can do is vote. There's nothing more powerful than a vote. Teach them that in order to have power, you have to vote, and you have to vote every time in the presidential election, the governor's election, city council. You have to vote every single time. And then the last things, teach them how to protest. Sometimes people don't want to protest because it's so visible, but there's a way to protest peacefully. So we need to teach people how to do those three things: advocate for themselves, vote, and protest.
Thank you, Steve. Next candidate is Kendall Scudder.
Thank you so much for this question. It is a pivotal question that every Texan and American needs to understand. It is the greed of these billionaires and how it will gobble every penny from the pockets of every teacher, every veteran, every working class American. And they are going to try constantly to cut their own taxes and raise yours. And when they cut these social services, they never cut the pennies that go to them because their greed knows no bounds. The way that we respond about this as a party is putting a working class person in charge of this party, a working class person that understands that every single time that the Americans are asked to make compromises, it is the working class people asked to make those compromises, not the richest man in the world who is standing in the White House right now, prying every penny that he can out of your pockets to put it into his own, for his own programs that are constantly being resourced and frankly over-resourced on your back. Americans need to understand that this is on the backs of their kids' future, on the backs of you, that these billionaires are getting wealthy, and they're doing it by exploiting the working class.
Thank you, Kendall. Next candidate is Delia Parker Mims.
I remember we need to speak plainly to the people, plainly. This question has existed since we started selling us the trickle down theory, right? It don't trickle down. The Republicans have always looked out for their best interest, and their best interest comes with the high earners, the 1%, always. But somehow we've managed to make the American people think that these oligarchs and billionaires care about them and Democrats do not. Somehow we've managed to let them have the narrative that just because Trump ate a burger at Big Mac means he knows what the working class man is doing, despite all that they have done for the last 50 years, certainly longer than I've been around. So we've got to start speaking plainly to the American people, because we've been saying the same thing, but we just haven't been meeting them where they're at. They're everywhere. But I do have I have a question for Kendall, and that's regarding the.
Time is up.
You said, can I ask a question and give them 30 seconds to respond?
No, ma'am. Time's up. Thank you, Delia. Our next candidate is Aaron Arguijo.
Yes, thank you. Look, middle-class Texans are one layoff away from losing their entire lifestyle. Meanwhile, these corporations and these companies are getting rich off the backs of these hardworking Texans. Minimum wage was created in 1938. Since then, we're going on a century already. It started out as 25 cents. We're at $7.25 almost 100 years later. Meanwhile, the prices of houses have gone up. We've all seen what inflation has done at the grocery store. What we have to do is take that opportunity that Donald Trump has given us of what the chaos that he's creating by giving his pals tax cuts, and turn it into a messaging opportunity for the Texas Democratic Party. And so that's what I think that we need to do what I would do as the next TDP chair, is to turn that into a messaging opportunity for when we start recruiting candidates that are going to run these races to contest every single Republican, we can give them and equip them with messaging power and help them, clarify their messaging as well.
Thank you, Aaron. Next candidate is Patsy Woods Martin.
Thank you. So what I've proposed is that the Texas Democratic Party invest in a war room that would put these Republicans and their incredibly destructive policies on the defense every single day. I agree with Delia. We need to be talking in plain, concrete language, no more glittering generalities about how these folks are destroying everyday working Texans' lives. And we need to distribute that message on every channel. We've got to meet voters where they are. I've also proposed creating a creators council so that we can work with people who already have large audiences to make sure that Texans know how destructive Donald Trump and Greg Abbott are to their lives. We got to fire these guys before we can suggest an alternative to hire.
Thanks, Patsy. Our next question. Our party platform supports the repeal of Abbott and Patrick's Operation Lone Star, a militarized policy that criminalizes Native and migrant communities. How does the party fight against border militarization and fight for Indigenous and migrants' rights in the current area? And how do we make that a winning message? Our first candidate is Patsy Woods Martin.
So yeah, right now there are 10,000 Border Patrol agents along our border, 10,000 National Guard and DPS agents, and then an additional $90 million granted to border police departments and sheriff's office. These are people that are actually part of the economy of South Texas. We need an immigration policy that enforces fair and reasonable border enforcement measures. None of us want criminals walking the streets no matter where they're born, right? Lisbon, Los Angeles, Los Gallos, or Lubbock. At the same time, we have to protect mixed status families, farm workers, and DACA program recipients especially. There has to be a clearer and easier path to citizenship for immigrants. And as party chair, I would work with our electeds and our local officials to make sure we've got the right policies to elect Democrats in South Texas.
Thank you, Patsy. Our next candidate is Mary Gomez.
Hi, yes. Thank you for asking this question. One of the things I learned with the Border Wall Coalition was that you have to meet with the tribes, you have to meet with the religious leaders, and we have to go against the militarization because it will have an environmental effect on our region. The militarization means destruction of forests, and we have to protect our forests. When we get environmentalists involved with the movement, we're bound to win because Mother Nature always wins. If she doesn't show us like at first, she'll end up showing us in the end. And nobody knows that more than the indigenous population. Nobody knows that more than the migrants who are one with the land when we farm and ranch. And so it's really hard to go up against the federal government when it comes to eminent domain, but fighting against them with the environment is a great way to do it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks.
Our next candidate is Lily Schechter.
I think this is a great question and a really complicated question, but I think we have to start off by doing a couple things. One is to listen to local leadership and listen to our local voters. I think that the party needs to be in these areas, meeting with the voters, talking to them about the issues that they care about, figuring out the right way to message the immigration. And then what we need to do is build that into the army that's going to elect elected officials up and down the ballot that are going to go into Austin and change the structure that we have currently. So I think we have to do two things. We have to, number one, listen to the voters and follow our leaders in the Valley and listen to our voters and figure out the best way to message on this issue. Because I live in Harris County, which is very different. So I want to be down on the ground, listening to local leaders. And then I want to make sure that we are empowering local leaders and running elections so that we vote elected Democrats up and down the ballot in Austin to make sure that we can fight back in the legislative session.
Thank you, Lily. Our next candidate is Steve Miller.
Okay, first of all, the show of military personnel and the show of DPS officer down there is really just for that. It's just for show. You cannot stop the tide or the flow of immigrants coming across the border with just a show of force down there. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It has never worked. It's a huge waste of money, and it doesn't really get to what the problem really is. The problem is that back in the 1930s and 40s, the United States corporations went down to Central America and mined and stole all of their natural resources. So people are coming to where their natural resources is taken. So the way to totally and completely solve this bad, terrible problem is to build up Central America with a Marshall Plan type of program where we go down, we help the Central Americans develop their industry, develop their infrastructure so they can create industry for themselves. And at the same time, we create a trading partner. So once the people in Central America can take care of themselves with their own natural resources, we will solve the problem. Until then, we're going to have them coming north.
Thank you, Steve. Our next candidate is Kendall Scudder.
Thank you so much for this question. I get really frustrated in discussions on immigration because I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy that you can't have secure borders while also being humane and moral in the way you interact with people. I don't understand why treating people and human beings with basic human dignity is so controversial. And as a party, I think that we can walk and chew gum on this issue at the same time and understand that, we do not want, migrant criminals roaming the streets. We also don't want folks seeking refuge in the United States to be treated with vast amounts of disrespect. I think this is an opportunity for our party to build relationships with partners on the ground that are doing these types of service work. I'll tell you, there is one county party chair that I spoke with who is personally within her county party fighting to provide immigration services with people by linking them with immigration attorneys who will provide them with pro bono services. We as a party should be building those partnerships as close as we can with people that are doing work on the ground so that we can serve a bit of a philanthropic help here for people that are needing us, because we have to walk the walk as a party and not just talk the talk.
Thank you, Kendall. Our next candidate is Delia Parker Mims. You're muted, Delia.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm also from El Paso, so for those of you from El Paso as well, peace. Everybody at the border does want security, but we also want due process. We want rights. I think that all of us have essentially said the same thing. I really agree with Kendall and Lily. As far as what the party can do about that policy is engage more, because we really thought people cared about kids in cages. They didn't. And Abbott is doing horrible things, putting up barbed wire. I've heard he's putting crocodiles or thinking about putting alligators in the river. There's horrible things that are happening, and we can have a humane immigration system. But as far as this party is concerned, we do need to engage more with the people in those areas to find out what kinds of things that they need, what they want, and work with our representatives to try to make those things happen. So all of it does boil down to increasing engagement, but locally and actually doing that and actually listening to the people in those areas where it's effective.
Thank you, Delia. Our next candidate is Aaron Arguijo.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question, and I'm glad that we're finally talking about immigration and the border. We can't use militarized action on asylum seekers and refugees who are coming to our country to look for work or who are running from a fear of whatever's happening in their country. We can't do that. Instead of building walls and, like Delia mentioned, putting alligators in the Rio Grande Valley, we should be utilizing, Greg Abbott specifically, should be utilizing that money to help kids come back to rural areas like Edinburgh and McAllen. And instead of everybody leaving and going to the Metroplex or to San Antonio, to Austin, or Dallas, provide them with some sort of resource to come back and an incentive to come back and start a law practice or run for office locally. There's so much that we can do, but I'll tell you what not doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and that's militarizing anybody. Right now, I believe with this, one of the laws that Joe Biden passed, I'm drawing a blank on which one, but we had 2,200 judges that could have expedited these asylum seekers. They shot it down. So we have the resources and we have the manpower. We're just scaring people into making them believe that we're being taken over.
Thank you, Aaron. Eric, will you read our next question?
Yeah, of course. And we're going to start with Aaron. So when it comes to Spanish language communication to ensure Latino and Indigenous Spanish-speaking communities have access to democratic messaging and resources, what is your plan to support a bilingual, multicultural message in various forms of media?
Yes, I think that we should even shift it to trilingual because in Houston, I believe that there's a huge Mandarin speaking population. So I think that now our voter being able to vote needs to be, in a trilingual effort at least. But definitely, like we mentioned, I think one of the biggest things that a TDP chair, I would do as a TDP chair, is absolutely have every single message that's going out in English also go out in Spanish. Same with the Mandarin. Because that's a huge part of the population. So that's what I would do, is to make sure that the messaging is translated in every language that we could, specifically the majorities that could turn out votes in Texas.
Thank you. Patsy?
First of all, I would listen to leaders of our Hispanic community when it comes to how that messaging should be developed and delivered. There's no question that we are missing the boat when we are not talking to Spanish speakers in their own language. We are leaving those votes on the table, if you will. And we have to work with local leaders who understand their communities to invest in Spanish language, collateral material, websites, etc. And like I hope the reason that we have not done that to the extent that we should at this point is simply we haven't had the resources to do that. This is not inexpensive, but so we've got to build a program to do it and find the money to fund that program so that we can communicate with all of our voters.
Thank you. Mehdi, you're up next.
Hi, guys. Well, to begin with, I speak Spanish fluently, I write Spanish fluently, and I read Spanish fluently. And one of the things that we also need with the Democratic Party is we need to connect with our Latinos. One of the things that I feel that I connect with all the Latinos is I am one of them. I am the single mother that has been struggling here in Texas. I am the businesswoman who has overcome adversities, and also many people have cast doubt on me and telling me that, I won't make it, that who do I think I am, trying to instill some kind of imposter syndrome with me, but definitely we'll have a Latino message. One of the things that I want to do once I become TDP chair is I want to have a carne asada tour where we all go out as top Democrats and we just barbecue and meet all the voters.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Lily?
Thanks, guys.
This is a great question. I'm the former Harris County Democratic Party chair in the Houston area, which has the largest Latino population in the state. When I was the Democratic Party chair, we increased Latino turnout in Harris County, and we did that in a variety of different ways, but some of it is having elected officials and candidates that look like your leaders and your voters. So in 2018, Lena Hidalgo was running against a Republican incumbent, and we ran a massive campaign supporting Lena. But the other things that we did were to make sure we were in Spanish language, making sure that we worked with our elected officials to be on Spanish television, Spanish radio, and to do some of our pieces in Spanish as well. And I will tell you, on my website, lilyforchair.com, I already have a little button on there that says in Spanish, so you can toggle the whole thing to Spanish if you need to. So it's making things accessible and making sure that you have Democratic candidates that look like our electorate that cover the entire state.
Thank you. Steve, we got you next.
All right. I mean, really, this question just baffles me, really. I just don't understand how a whole ethnic population that has the largest ethnic population in the state of Texas with 12 million people is not being respected. You know, I'm surprised that this is even an issue. And they're the largest ethnic population in the state. I mean, it just seems like the Hispanic ethnicity has been discounted wholly. I mean, the TDP didn't even put an official forum in the Valley, but yet they put one in Lubbock, one of the most sparsely populated places in the state. We put one there, but we didn't even put one down in the Valley. I just think right now to the TDP that Hispanics really don't matter. I'll tell you that. I mean, this should not be a problem. We should not be addressing this at all. This should have been fixed, or it should have been something that has been a part of our repertoire for many years leading up to now, given the fact that the Hispanic population is so large in this state. If you have not developed something for this, this means that you really don't care.
Thank you. Kendall, up next.
So I mentioned earlier that I believe it should be an aspiration of the party to have a Spanish language comms department. It should be a very high priority because Spanish media is just different than English language media, not just in its language. And so you've got to have professionals that work in both of those outlets. What I've also said in previous forums before is that I believe that our party should be a clearinghouse for advertising, right? So that you county chairs around the state and SDC members and clubs aren't having to reinvent the wheel every time that you're having to put ads in the field. They should already be created where you just slap a logo on it and move on. And when we do that, they should all be done in Spanish as well. And that includes Spanish language radio. You shouldn't have to have Spanish language advertising experts in your small county in order to be able to put a high quality Spanish language advertisement together for radio. We should already have those pre-built and be able to disseminate them amongst our county chairs. We've worked to do programs similar to that in the past. I'd like to make sure that people have easier access to those and that we expand the reach of that.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, coming off of mute is Delia.
So it should go without saying that we have to start dedicating resources towards our Hispanic population being a large part of our Texas community. In speaking with members of the SDEC and the Hispanic caucus, I know that there are ideas that they had and we're going to address with the next chair, like creating more engagement in those communities. We actually, and that's putting that caucus as a part of that strategic plan. And that strategic plan has to certainly go after that Hispanic vote, but also other votes. What I can tell you is in Denton County, we have many growing populations that we do not go after. Asian is also another one of those populations. And just like Kendall said, there are more distinct type of media for different groups. As an example, I've been on quite a few Asian podcasts and radio stations. And when Beto was running against Abbott for governor, one of the persons there said, we really like Democrats, but they never come to our station. So we've got to increase our engagement. We've got to engage our Hispanic caucus, and we've got to meet people where they're at.
Thank you. And stay with us, Delia, because you're up next on the next question. So what kind of strategies do you have for maintaining sustainable programs for voter education, outreach, engagement, registration, and turnout for all counties throughout the 2-year cycle and into the foreseeable future?
That's a great question. And what I tell people is I believe that we need a strategic plan in 4 areas. We need 4 legs on the table. Starting off with fundraiser, that's not what you mentioned, but fundraiser, engagement, increasing voter registration, and get out the vote. So each of those categories, I believe we need to develop a strategic plan. And when we look at the different type of county, I do not believe one plan fits all counties. So we're going to have a targeted, different approach for our rules, because our goals may be simply to increase turnout, right? Not to flip. Our suburban and our suburban rural counties, when we have more growth, our goals may be more to register people in that area because there's more new growth, and we got to keep them registered. We got to get them registered and then get them to the polls. And then in our urban counties, we have to engage deeply in getting them to the polls at a deep level so they can overcome those rural votes and we can turn blue. So I simply believe it's creating a strategic plan and implementing.
Thank you. Aaron, you're up next.
Yes, I think that training the current candidates right now is going to be a huge task, something that needs to be done. Another thing is being able to recruit candidates or recruit chairs where we don't have any. There's several counties, I wouldn't even doubt if it's 100 counties in Texas that don't have a county chair. So being able to train them and give them the messaging that they need. If a candidate does want to run for office, they need to be able to know where to go. A lot of times there's people that have this passion, this desire, candidates that want to run, and they don't know where to go to look for a Democratic Party chair. So I think that's going to be essential for us to make sure that we're competitive in the state of Texas, and also to be able to challenge every Republican seat. I think an additional thing that we can do, or that I will be doing, is a fundraising effort with all the local organizations from these counties to see what we could do to raise funds for these county chairs to be able to have some sort of brick and mortar. I'd love to stipend out some money if it's in the budget. I know that the TDP budget is huge and just operating is expensive, but those are just things that I've thought out, and we'll come across those when it happens.
Thank you. Patsy, we got you next.
Thank you, Eric. I think the key word in that question is sustainable. My assessment of how the party has operated in the past is more like a campaign where we try to raise as much money as we can to put into the campaign, and then boom, it's over, and there's little or no or negative resources into the future. So I would like to change the mindset of our party and work for it to be a sustainable organization that has programs that run throughout the election cycle. And so the party has a strategic plan. Let's go back and look at that strategic plan, see where we are, think about renewing, rebuilding, and holding ourselves accountable, and then going out and executing on a fundraising plan to have a sustainable organization.
Thank you for that. Mehdi?
Yes, thank you. So one of the things that I definitely wanted to start working on is the Texas Playbook. The Texas Playbook, in order for it to work properly, we need to identify our key players. Who are our local leaders? Who are our local activists? What organizations, for example, for like Mothers Against Greg Abbott, Mothers for Democracy, those type of organizations, I want to work with them to help them fundraise so that way they can bring in the voters, because they really are the ones that can network with the community. And also there are former candidates that I would like to bring on board and re-engage them. If there's one thing that former candidates love, is being contacted and being re-engaged, so that way they can stay motivated and stay involved. And they'll definitely invest in the Democratic Party, knowing that we really do care about them, and whatever efforts that they did have not been forgotten. So, for example, our local DA, he is very involved in getting out the votes, and he's not even on the ballot.
Thank you. Lily, you're up next.
This is a great question. I love this question because I've already done this. When I was chair of the Harris County Democratic Party, the largest county in the state of Texas, the first thing that we did was to start changing the mindset of the Democratic Party to turn it into a year-round organizing machine with sustainable programming that happened year in and year out. And it's not just a 2-year cycle. It's actually looking at a 10-year plan to figure out how we're going to change the power in Texas. How we're going to change the face of Texas is by doing year-round organizing and hiring people in our communities around the state that look like our electorate, that live with our electorate, that are in local regions. And then we do programming, we do voter education, but we really meet with local leaders to create programming. In Harris County, we created the African American Council and the Latino Council immediately when I was party chair so that we could bring more people into the party and then listen to the programs that they wanted to bring to the party so we could do voter education or voter guides or registration at different high schools, depending on what people were interested in. And then we turn that into a year-round operation, and you do that by raising funds to support those efforts.
Great, thank you. Steve.
Yes, I think the current Democratic Party already has a structure that is being underutilized. You know, we have the precinct chairs, you know, throughout the state of Texas. Most of the counties barely have precinct chairs. If we can do precinct chair recruiting, get all of those positions filled up, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. After we get those positions filled up, then we need to train them on what they need to be doing, how they need to reach out to their constituencies, what issues they need to be covering, candidate recruitment, all from the precinct chair position. Then the county chairs. The state has quite a few county chairs that are missing. So we need to fill those positions and get them trained up as well. And then after we get those two things fulfilled, we need to have the candidates whenever they campaign, they need to come to all of the areas, especially the rural areas.
Thank you for that. Kendall, do you want to wrap up this question?
Sure. I mean, I think Patsy's on the money on the discussion about sustainability of it. We have a habit as a party of putting together these one-off programs and giving them a cute name, and they are in fact impactful or helpful during the cycle, and then they go away. And we've kind of forgotten about the basics of a party and integrating that into just simply the way we function and not treating them like they're these one-off programs that do operate year-round, like Lily said. You can't put a sack of flour in the oven and expect it to make biscuits. And we do that every cycle. We show up and think, well, maybe if we just keep flushing money at this, we're going to win elections. But we've been skipping all these steps in between to try to get us there. And that's what this question is about, is how do you build that in a sustainable way throughout the cycle to make sure that it's ingrained in who we are and what we do. That means creating expectations for people. You can't always hold everybody accountable, but nobody even knows what's expected of them. Whether you're a county chair or a caucus leader, an SDEC member, no one says, hey, here's what we're seeing coming out of your district or out of your demographic, and here's what we'd like to see coming out of it. No one makes these data-driven decisions. I think we go back to the basics and try to build a grassroots apparatus across this state that is focused on where we have opportunities to pick up, where we have opportunities to flip, and how do we ingrain this in the way that we operate so that it isn't just cyclical and it happens in perpetuity.
Awesome. Thank you, candidates. Kristen?
Thank you, Eric. Our next question: how do we get more Hispanic and Indigenous Democrats to run for office? Our first candidate is Kendall Scudder.
I mean, I think you start with a real robust candidate recruitment program. I've seen some old studies about recruiting people and how they did some studies on different types of people and how many times it took to reach out to them. And there's some demographics that are just harder to recruit than others, right? And we need to have a candidate recruitment program that kind of understands that and is really intentional to make sure that we have candidates that represent the communities that they're running in, not just in their ideology, but also in their demographics, right? And so I think having real intentional candidate recruitment programs that are happening all across the state, but not necessarily in a way that's putting our thumb on the scale in primaries. I don't even know how necessary that is in tier 1 races, as much as it is in some of these districts where we just can't seem to recruit candidates. There's no reason we should have vacancies for United States Congress on the ballot. We should try to recruit for every single position on the ballot where we can. And I think this is a thing that TDP has actually done pretty well, is that this cycle they had more state candidates than they even had in 2018. There's a real robust effort there. I just think it needs to be supported. We need to work with our constituency caucuses as well as our SDEC to try to create a program that's operating functionally there.
Thank you, Kendall. Our next candidate is Delia Parker-Mims.
Thank you so much. That question brings me to what I've been saying as my theme throughout this process is being one team. I'm not saying we don't need candidates that look like the people in their community. We absolutely do need that, but we can get that through engagement. So I guess my point is, I think it's time that we started looking at ourselves as Democrats, not how many candidates of this color or that color. And I'm coming to you as a Black woman, who still has the hardest time of getting support and money. So I understand that. But since we've had so many different type of belief systems in our party, it's making us hard to be one team. I really think we have to start looking at people and their values to get them to become our candidate choice. When you just focus on race, you get a Clarence Thomas, not a Thurgood Marshall. But if we want more Hispanics, we need to engage more in the community and ask them more to run for office.
Thank you, Delia. Our next candidate is Aaron Arguijo.
They need to believe in the Democratic Party. They need to believe in the Texas Democratic Party chair. They need to believe in the programs that we keep talking about and all the efforts and the strategies that we're implementing. We have to give them something to believe in. That's how we're going to recruit people from any ethnicity. And once they start believing that we're going to be a winning team, because we're not, we're a losing team. And that's just the bottom line, irregardless to all the back of the, all the things that happen in the background with the whole TDP staff that I got to meet recently, which was amazing. None of that matters. The TDP chair is the head of this organization. And if it goes bad, it's going to be on him. And having people believe in the messaging that the TDP chair is going to truly make a difference, and invest in a lot of these areas like South Texas that we keep talking about, the Valley. Somebody that's truly going to put the rubber to the road, so to speak, and believe that we can make a change in Texas and not just hope, but believe. And I think the candidates will follow.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next candidate is Patsy Woods Martin.
So I actually have a lot of experience in recruiting candidates, and I did that working right alongside staff from the Texas Democratic Party and other allies. And the first thing we did, or the first thing I would do, is I would look at the demographics of the districts that we're asking people to represent. And we are most effective with our candidates when those candidates reflect the demographics of their districts. I would work with our county party chairs and our SDEC members to understand what people are looking for in that district. And you can't do that sitting in Austin, Texas. You got to get out, you got to be in the community. I then would let these candidates know with very clearly what they can expect from the Democratic Party and the allies once they sign up to run. This is very important that we have great candidates that reflect the districts they're looking to represent.
Thank you, Patsy. Our next candidate is Mary Gomez.
Hey, everyone. So, first of all, I would definitely visit the universities. The universities is our nest for future candidates. And with the university, we need to start training at that young of age and inspiring at that young of age. I wish that I had some kind of support system that was there to guide me when I had servitude aspirations, when I wanted to be a part of something greater than I. And so there wasn't that. But also I had issues with identifying, who I was siding with. It wasn't until President Obama, who was the one who inspired me to vote with the Democratic Party in 2008. Those were the issues that I identified with. So I think that we need to start guiding young people to figure out what their identity is, and then we'll get them to recognize our culture.
Thank you, Mary. Our next
Thank you.
candidate is Lily Schechter.
I think candidate recruitment is incredibly important. I also believe that it's different in every region of the state, and we need to use local leaders to make sure that we are talking about the issues that are talking about the elections that are on the ballot. Going into Tarrant County, knowing that they have a county judge position that's going to be up this next election cycle, and working with local leaders to bring in the Tarrant County Young Dems to make sure that they're finding a candidate that shares their values. One of the ways that we make sure that we do candidate recruitment really well is that we use our current elected officials and our current party chairs and our current SDEC members and our current leaders in those communities to go recruit more candidates. There's an organization, Annie's List, that Patsy mentioned, that is working to do that every single day all across the state to make sure that we're not just recruiting candidates for the 26 election, but we're talking about the 28 election, the 30 election, the 32 election. And then we're also talking about nonpartisan elections and school board elections, because those are also opportunities around the state. So I think we should be using local leaders who can, like Lena Hidalgo and Sylvia Garcia, to help recruit candidates.
Thank you, Lily. Our last candidate is Steve Miller.
All right. I hate to steal this particular mantra from Patsy, but it sounded real good when she said it on Saturday. So I'll just repeat it tonight. We have to do culturally competent organizing. We have to go into our communities. We got to show up. We have to listen. We have to build relationships. And if they believe in the message and the people that we are trying to help, then when it comes time for us to recruit candidates, we won't have a problem in doing so. So the basic thing is we have to build relationships and people show up and show them that we care.
Thank you, Steve. Our next question. The Indigenous Peoples Caucus believes the party must take a stronger stance on environmental justice, centering Indigenous voices in climate and land policies. Fracking, LNG projects, and border wall construction have desecrated sacred sites in Indigenous lands. How can the Texas Democratic Party support Indigenous-led resistance against corporate and state-backed destruction of desecrated sacred sites in Indigenous lands? Our first candidate is Kendall Scudder.
Man, that's a great question. And I'm going to be honest with you, Kristen. I am no pro in the issues facing the Indigenous community, and know that I'm going to be leaning on the Indigenous Persons Caucuses a lot in some of these discussions. But I do want to reinforce to you and to those watching this my commitment to environmentalism. I think that, as a person under the age of 40, I think young people particularly understand the importance of environmental issues. Polling shows that because, this is an environment. I don't want to have to put a gas mask on my child to take them to school, right? There are long-term consequences to these really bad decisions that really bad actors have been making. And this ties back with the conversation we had earlier about greed. It largely comes from this billionaire class and this corporate class that prioritizes their profits over the survivability of our planet, over the health and safety of our communities. And so, no, I'm committed on that. And I'm going to really be leaning on, the Indigenous Persons Caucuses and other persons who are more familiar with it on ways that we can help protect it. I'm not going to bullshit you for a minute. I'm just going to level with you and tell you, let's work together on that and figure out ways that we can team up to make it happen.
Thank you, Kendall. Our next candidate is Delia Parker Mims.
We know when Democrats win, we govern with compassion and empathy. And right now we're not winning. And so we can ask about, a lot of issues coming up and what can we do other than organize and make noise until we're winning, it's going to be hard to have a stronger impact on the outcome of policy. But in order to get there, hopefully we have learned that our coalition needs to be big and include the indigenous population and include leaders from that community and guide us on those issues that are important in that area with those community leaders. Hopefully we have learned at least that much. I can guarantee you we are not engaging enough with many of the communities that are outside of the standard white, Black, and Hispanic. We're not really reaching out. So we really do have to make an intentional effort to do that and work with those leaders.
Thank you, Delia. Our next candidate is Aaron Arguijo.
Thank you. So we should pump the brakes on this fracking on anything that's destroying our environment, number one. And so that's definitely something that we should all at least agree that we need to address. And in terms of the indigenous people and the sacredness of this, what's happening, it's we as a country have treated every other nationality. When we want something, we just go and take it. And that's not okay. We did it to the Native Americans. We did it to Saudi Arabia when Saddam was trying to go in. We went in there and said, no, you can't do this. I'm trying to do it to Canada right now. And quite frankly, I feel like we're the dumbest country on this earth, because we, instead of leading this world, this nation with curing cancer, we are fighting about wearing a mask. But I guess righting the wrongs of the past and not just bringing out nuclear weapons whenever we don't like what we see.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next candidate is Patsy Woods Martin.
Well, first of all, I would work with the leaders of our Indigenous Peoples Caucus to understand the resistance and where you all are focusing at any given moment. And then I go back to this war room that I would propose the Texas Democratic Party investing in. And I've asked the current Monique, the current ED, what that would cost. And it's about $500,000 over a cycle. But we need to be telling all Texans how the policies of the right-wing Republicans who are in power in this state, exactly what they're doing to destroy our lives. And that starts with the environment. And so every day, every single day, we need to be putting these people on the defense. And if I were party chair, we'll be doing that.
Thank you, Patsy. Our next candidate is Mary Gomez.
So I'd like to defer to a quote from one of my favorite movies, Gone with the Wind, and it says, "Land is the only thing in the world worth working for, worth fighting for, worth dying for, because it's the only thing that lasts." And so what we need to do with Indigenous people is make sure that they are established properly as religious organizations, as trusts, as recognizable tribes, to make sure that they can fight for their rights when it comes to like paper, when it comes to deeds and trusts. That's what we need to make sure that the Indigenous people are good, because working with the Environmental Coalition, I met many tribe chiefs. I met many different Indigenous families, and they are not very well educated and they need help and support. And we're going to be that for them with the Texas Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mary. Our next candidate is Lily Schechter.
sorry about being muted. I think it's incredibly important that the party is a resource and that we support our caucuses, our indigenous caucuses, or different constituency groups across the state when they have an environmental issue. We need to help them organize it. The party has people resources, we have data resources, we have technology resources. So we need to listen to local leaders when they have an issue. Here in Harris County, County Attorney Christian Menefee has been suing the federal government for the last several months that has to do with environmental issues in Fifth Ward that have been causing higher rates of cancer. So we need to, and so when I say we need to organize our people and our data and our technology, if there's an issue, we need to organize our elected officials around that issue as well and figure out what the options are so that we can fight back. The other thing is it comes down to is we've got to have elected officials that share our values and that can be in the fight with us all across the state. Harris County is very lucky because we have Democratic elected officials. That's not true in every part of the state. And we need to fight to make sure that we elect Democrats that listen to our voters and listen to our constituencies and caucuses, and then fight back so that we can make sure that our government works for all of us.
Thank you, Lily. Our last candidate is Steve Miller.
I think in answering this question that we have to really face the facts of what's happening. It's going to be very, very difficult for any of our caucuses to have power if we're not in power. I think Dealey was absolutely correct. It's going to be hard for us to affect any policy if we are not in power. So there are first order businesses that we have to do and second order businesses that we have to do. And the first thing is we have to concentrate on those issues that have a good message, those issues that appeal to people on the ground. That's jobs, that's being able to buy a home, that's affordability, that's education, and it's healthcare. Once we lean into those particular policies, I believe we'll begin to win these elections. After we win these elections and we're in power, then these caucuses can actually have efficacy. They can be effective in the way that they lobby. So we need to teach them how to be personal advocates for the issues, writing letters, showing up, making office visits, and making those phone calls.
Thank you, Steve. Eric, will you read the next question?
Yeah, of course. Steve, we're going to be starting with you, so don't go too far. What would you do to increase and cultivate the support and trust of our grassroots donors?
We have to show up. We have to show up. I think many times in the Democratic Party that we have people that we lean on in terms of giving money, and then we don't reach out to them effectively. First thing you got to do is show up. You have to go see them. You have to wine them. You have to dine them. You have to listen to them. And then once you listen to them and you know what their priorities are, then we have to go deliver for them. So we have to deliver. That's the last thing we have to do.
Thank you. Kendall.
I think that a lot of grassroots donors do not feel that engagement piece of the question earlier is meeting their expectations. And that's kind of been my experience. I think we're missing right now a really great opportunity on the engagement front. I think we're all doing the best we can, but we're in the middle of a chairs race while we're facing this hugely perilous time. And I would hope that the party could immediately kick into gear on the engagement piece and fight back and be seen. Even if you don't control the levers of power, get caught trying, right? And I think that when folks see us showing up and advocating and fighting back, they're going to start opening up their grassroots dollars and becoming sustaining members. The next thing that I hear from people a lot is that they were never asked to be sustaining members. It's always kind of been an afterthought. I think as a party, we all have to be working together to constantly be reminding people of our sustaining membership program, the Texas Trailblazers program. Anybody watching this program right now should consider becoming a sustaining donor to the party because, until our grassroots come in and start supporting our party in real ways, we're going to continue to be hamstrung by the donor class of our state.
Thank you. Thank you. Delia.
Our grassroots donors are so important. Of course, we love our larger donors and we want to sustain all of them. But every real fight, not just from their dollar, but from being involved in the community, every real fight will be successful if you can get it at the grassroots level. So we do have to let our donors know that we appreciate them. We have to have constant communication with them. We have to let them know what their dollars are being spent. We have to give them opportunities to be proud of themselves. And it is pretty much a full-time thing that we have to do. Now, as Denton County Chair, we've increased our fundraising, increased in sustaining and those, but we've gotten to a point now where we're organized and the chair can focus on it. And so as we go into this new TDP chair race, our chair is going to have a lot of things that they're going to have to deal with. But sustaining donors and getting our grassroots donors comfortable is going to be very important.
Thank you. Thank you. Aaron?
Staying in constant communication with them and appreciating everything that they do. I like to reference 1965 a lot, the Civil Rights Act, because they didn't have a lot of friends with big money to help them. All they did was organize and, they protested and it worked, right? And so I think that going back to the fundamental basics of what grassroots starts with something like that. And so being able to appreciate what they're sending to us, ultimately, obviously the big donors are great, but I feel like small donors are giving everything they got wholeheartedly, right? Not to say that somebody who doesn't contribute a lot of money doesn't, but it's like that reference in the Bible where the lady that gave a few pence was rewarded greater than people who gave a lot, and it was because she gave all that she had. So I think just appreciating them and maybe even doing something for them along the way and inviting them to an event.
Thank you for that. Patsy, you're up next.
Yeah, when we see the word donor, we usually think money, right? But I'm going to argue that the Texas Democratic Party has donors of time, talent, and treasure. In order to cultivate and support those individuals, we have got to build accountability, trust, and communication with those donors. We have got to also articulate a compelling reason to give. We have to tell people what the Texas Democratic Party is doing, how we're doing it, and then we've got to thank them and report back and let them know that their resources have been used wisely and that we are keeping our commitment to them when we ask them for their donations.
Thank you. Mehdi? Mehdi Gomez?
Hey guys, I'm here. Sorry, it's because I have to go pick up my son, but is the question in the... Okay, sorry. Indigenous Peoples Caucus believes the party must take a stronger stance on environmental justice and...
No, it's the second one. I'll go to paste it again.
Please. Sorry.
Just to repeat it.
Can you go ahead, Eric? Go ahead.
Just to repeat it, what would you do to increase and cultivate the support and trust of our grassroots donors?
Yeah, so definitely letting them know that a professional is in the position of executive, that we are going to change the game and making sure that we are doing business with legitimate businesses. One of the ideas that I had was making sure that whoever we do business with is licensed and bonded as well. I think that we're just picking up anyone who's willing to work, and we need to vet them a little bit more.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Lily, if you want to wrap up this one?
Yeah, I think that this is a great question. How are we going to increase and cultivate the support and trust of our grassroots donors in the Democratic Party? But I think that that's a part of a bigger question is how do we actually increase trust in the Democratic Party with everybody, not just our grassroots donors, but our elected officials, our candidates, our SDC members, our county party chairs, and most importantly, our voters. I think we need to build trust back in the party across the board. There's been studies that have shown that people are just not excited about the Democratic Party and they don't believe in the Democratic Party. And I think part of the thing we need to do is have honest conversations about the Democratic Party, the work we're doing and the work we're not doing. And then recognizing that if we're not in communities across the state, how are we going to build these relationships? How are we going to build trust? I think the number one way we build trust is by being in community with people across the state and working and listening with local leaders in those areas. So I think the party should be all across the state, and we should be building those relationships back. And it's grassroots organizing that we need to do. And then as we start to build those back, we can start talking about building programs with digital programs and with fundraising programs across the state.
Thank you, thank you. And so this is the last question. Lily, we're going to start with you. So last question before we move to closing statements. How do we talk to the different classes of Hispanic voters who flipped and voted Republican so that they could come back into the Democratic corner? And why do you think we lost them?
There's actually a chat going on right now on the YouTube channel, and that's one of the things that someone asked there is we are not actually addressing this issue in this forum and talking about it. But I think we, number one, need to acknowledge that it happened and acknowledge that we have been losing voters because we haven't been meeting voters where they're at, and we're not communicating in ways and platforms that resonates with them. So we need to come back to the drawing board and figure out why we're not resonating with voters in different communities across the state, and do some research and some qualitative research to figure out why we aren't meeting, why we are not resonating and speaking with voters and meeting them where they're at. And we need to do that research. And then we need to turn that into a project plan so that we can start getting back in communities and talking to voters about the issues that they care about and using, the language that the everyday voter uses. And then once we start doing that, I think we kind of change the culture of communication amongst the Democratic Party. But the other thing that I would want to recognize is that we might have lost voters. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't welcome voters back into the party with open arms. And I've heard different conversations across the state where people say, well, they voted for Trump. The way I respond to that is, they voted for Trump, so what? Because they're still Democrats and they're still welcome back in the party. So we need to make sure that we're opening arms. We are a big tent party, and making sure that we take it, back to basics and do more research to make sure we're meeting voters where they're at, and then spending the time to talk to them and building those relationships. It's about building trust back in the party. People have lost trust in the party, and we do that by spending time with people in their communities with their local leaders.
Thank you for that. Steve?
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, when we were down in the valley, there was a young lady at the happy hour that Kendall Scudder put on after the forum, and I actually sat down with her for about an hour, and she told me exactly why she voted Republican. And she said throughout her time of life, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, and she said that her friends would tell her, when you get older, get married, and start having children, you're going to turn Republican. And she said when she got married, and started having children, that's exactly what happened. So when people tell us why they voted Republican, we have to listen to those answers, and then we have to make adjustments for it. We can't give people what we want them to have. We have to champion what it is that they want us to champion for them. And like I said many times before, Beto, our standard bearer in Texas for our party, told us that the Texas Democrats have lost their minds because we are not championing the values and concerns of the everyday, ordinary person.
Thank you. Kendall?
I think that because us as activists, right, most of the people here and watching are just kind of activists at heart, because we care so much about other folks and trying to make sure that they're taken care of. We tend to have an opinion and a way of operating where we assume everyone else does too. And the reality is, instead of constantly telling everyone to worry about everyone else, we as a party have to start telling people to worry about themselves as well. That includes things like public safety. It includes things like helping keep working families' taxes lower, making life more affordable, putting a roof over your head, making sure you can put ballet shoes on your kiddo, right? We unfortunately kind of get lost in issues where we're telling people that even if this issue doesn't matter to you, give me 10 more minutes and I can explain to you why it's important. But the reality is people vote with their guts, not their heads. And as a party, we have an obligation to talk to people, making sure that they understand that we are looking out for them. When we are elected, we are fighting for you, and we are going to throw down. There were 1.1 million Democrats who voted in 2020 and didn't vote in 24 because they don't feel like we fight hard enough, and they don't feel like we throw down when it counts.
Thank you. Thank you. Delia?
Thank you. Everything goes back to engaging with the people. I too spent time in the Valley talking with people there and was just listening, not trying to argue with them, but find out how could you actually have voted for this other side? What were you hearing? And it really just came down to we were not touching about the things that were important to them. And I've always been a big proponent that said that what is important to everybody in their household is how they can achieve the American dream for themselves and their family. That crosses every race, that crosses every newborn naturalized citizen is concerned about that. And I think as a party, when we were growing at our best time, we were letting people know that we cared about their ability to have economic freedom and justice. So I think we've got to get back to engaging in those communities with the leaders, with the people, start listening. Stop listening and then acting upon the things you hear.
Thank you. Thank you. Aaron, you're up next.
So the messaging was off for us this time around. The Republicans capitalized on the border issue and the economy, even though we know that Donald Trump destroyed our economy and we were on a recovery. They capitalized on that messaging because it was under Joe Biden's watch, and that's a fact. What Hispanic men and women want, they want to be able to feed their family. That's it, bottom line. So there's issues that might be happening that are going on throughout the state and throughout the nation that might not necessarily translate to people of the Valley or the Northwest Texas Panhandle. I'll give you an example, and this I tread carefully when I say this, but the Hispanics are predominantly conservative Catholic. They're not worried about the LGBTQIA plus community. That's a fact. You know, not to say that they don't care. They're not worried about that. In times where they're being told that immigrants are coming over and taking their jobs and creating this fear, they're worried about that. And they're worried about providing for their family. And so that's where we drop the ball extensively. To get that back, we need to change that messaging and really let them know what we've done, what we've been working on, and what we've been doing all these years to help their families.
Thank you. Thank you. Patsy?
So how do we talk to the different classes of Hispanic voters? Well, we start by not talking and instead listening. We need to listen to the concerns of our Hispanic voters. And then once we've listened to them, we need to tell them how Democrats will make their lives better. That all has to happen before we ask voters for their vote. So we've got to engage and support, as a state party, culturally competent, continuous community engagement, year-round organizing. We've got to listen before we talk. And, you know, Senator Cesar Blanco, Jonathan Weisfeld Hinojosa, the former county judge Barbara Canales have all endorsed my campaign because they believe I will do just that and will be able to fund a program to listen to our voters before we talk.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mary, do you want to wrap up this one for us?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you so much, guys. So talking to Hispanic voters, I think the reason why a lot of people have navigated here in South Texas, because we're growing, we're becoming richer here in South Texas. And when you become richer, that means you end up in a different tax bracket. When you end up in a different tax bracket, then you're going to be out of the conversations where, well, what kind of credits am I going to get? What kind of benefits am I going to get? You're out of that conversation. Now you're a tax-paying corporation owner, and that's why those kind of people navigate towards the Republican Party. What I want to do is make sure that we are holding those kind of conversations, guys. We are preparing Texans for becoming business owners. We are preparing Texans for becoming investors, and we're just not having those kind of conversations. We're too worried about some certain issues, but we're going to refocus, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now for the closing statements, each candidate will have a max of 60 seconds. So candidates, please give a closing statement, include why you are the best choice for TDP chair, And Mehdi, we are going to start with you.
Great, thank you so much. So I feel that I am the best choice for TDP chair because I am the Hispanic, Spanish-speaking Latina woman, business owner from I'm breaking ceilings, guys. And I want to make sure that I can inspire and give reassurance to other candidates who want to run. And I will do that regardless if I am the TDP chair or not. So I feel that I am the best candidate because right off the top, I'm going to be saving the TDP money by internalizing a lot of our accounting, making sure that we are in compliance. We don't have to save money with all these consultants. And then also making sure that we're doing business with the right people. We're going to vet a lot of our consultants. And I want to also make sure that a lot of the candidates feel inspired, that there aren't people around them that are telling them that they can't do it, or the consultants are telling them otherwise. I want a lot of candidates to go with their gut feelings and just run. And so I hope I can be that inspiration for all future candidates and for the Texas Democratic Party. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Lily?
Thank you so much to TDP and to everybody who put this forum together. We have done a lot of forums together as a group, and I know they've taken a lot of the staff's time and the organization's time. So really appreciate all of your help. I believe I'm the best person to be the next Democratic Party chair in the state of Texas because I've already done this job. I've already run the largest county in the state of Texas that has the largest voting population in the state of Texas. I come into this with the experience of having a county executive committee of 500 people. So I know what it means to work with a committee. When I was Harris County Democratic Party chair, we raised $5.5 million and turned the party into a year-round organizing machine. So I've raised more money than anybody that's running for the Democratic Party. So I know what that means, and I know what the job entails. So I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one. I also come out of Harris County, which is the most diverse and largest voting bloc in the state of Texas. So I understand what it means to work with voters all across the state. And finally, the last thing I'll close on is that I believe that listening is key. And I have a track record of listening to experts and listening to local leaders to make sure we build out a program that works best for everybody. And so that's why I appreciate all of your time, and I hope you'll consider voting for me for state Democratic Party chair.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, over the last several weeks, this is a very intense process running for chair. And over the last couple of weeks, I've really started to enjoy it because I've gotten a chance to know many of the candidates that are running. We're all friends. We talk on the phone just about every day in many different ways, and I think each and every one of us are capable of doing this job. So whoever gets elected, they're going to be capable and they're going to be efficacious in the job that they do. And so I think the strength that I bring to the table is the fact that I'm a unifier, seeing that the party is fractured in many ways. I think the only way that we can come together and start winning is for us to be unified and unify around a message that appeals to everybody. And if we can do that, I think we will close the gap, or at least stop this 31 consecutive year losing streak.
Thank you for that. Kendall?
So I grew up in East Texas with lesbian mamas. And when I was 12 years old, there was a Republican effort underway to take kids like me with same-sex parents out of our homes and put us in foster care. So I started knocking on doors. And in the last 23 years, I've served on every level of leadership in our party. I've been a precinct chair, a club president, and an interim county chair. I served on the SDEC, and I've been vice chair for finance of the party. I was nominated for the Senate in one of the most conservative districts in the state of Texas, where I felt ignored and I felt unappreciated by a party apparatus that didn't care about districts like mine in Northeast Texas. And I've also been a candidate in one of the bluest parts of the state where I won and currently serve as one of the directors of the Dallas Central Appraisal District. My point of telling you that is just try to make sure that you understand that I have seen this party from every angle. I know where all the landmines are because I've stepped on all of them, and I've learned a lot along the way. And I think it's important for our chair to understand what the grassroots of our party goes through every day, to fight to resource those people, and to understand that without the grassroots of our party, we don't have a party. And it's time to get out of our echo chambers, get away from the establishment class, and put you, the grassroots activists of this party, back in charge. And I hope I can count on your support.
Thank you. Thank you. Delia?
Thank you. This is one of those moments where I wish I knew a rap song and I could tell you why, I'm the best one. We've been doing this so long. I'm almost forgetting why I'm the best one. But I will tell you this. I do agree. I think we all have great qualities that we bring to this. But at this moment in time, I am the chair of the largest county in the state of Texas that has continuously increased Democratic turnout. That is exactly what we need at this moment in time in the state of Texas. While the state of Texas was going down, the national rate of Democrats voting is going down, and Denton County they're going up. Also, we've been number one for increasing voter registration. And we got that way by doing a targeted strategic plan and executing it. Denton County was no different and in no less state of array and dysfunction as in the state of Texas. But we were able to do that by identifying, engaging, and exciting Democrats to the polls. And we're ready to do that at the state level. And I believe that I'm the person with the most well-rounded skills to do that. Thank you for your question and for allowing us to do this in a virtual capacity.
Thank you. Thank you. Aaron?
Yes, thank you all for having me here tonight. My entire life, the reason I'm the candidate that you should select is because my entire life has been a life of service. I joined the military and I served in 2 tours. I fought for both Republican, Democrat, Independent, and anybody in between. In my 20s, I simultaneously also built churches across the United States and Texas and Mexico. Sorry. But what I'm trying to say is my entire life has been given. Right now, I am on the board of a nonprofit organization called Texas Top Prospects, where we help kids here in San Antonio, inner city kids, play football instead of turning to the streets. So everything that I've done in my entire life is to serve. And right now, I'm using that service to serve the people of Texas. And that's why I'm the best choice. Guys like me come from an area where there's a lot of misinformation. Less than 8% of people graduate college from where I'm at. So they've capitalized on that. So I'm one of the few that has made it and is going back to make a difference. And I'm hoping that I can count on your vote so that we can do that across all of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Patsy, you're wrapping it up for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric and Kristen, and thank you, TDP staff, for all you've done along the way and for making tonight possible. This election is about who can lead the Texas Democratic Party in a complicated and often fractured democratic ecosystem. There are a couple things that set me apart from these other great candidates. One, I have run a winning statewide organization. I worked alongside the party. I sat on the van working group. I recruited candidates with party staff. I know what the party does well and where it can improve. I have raised in the last decade alone $30 million for Democratic candidates and causes. I've built relationships all around this state that I'd like to leverage for our Texas Democratic Party. And finally, I have no conflicts. I have no contracts with any outside group. If I'm elected, you will have 1,000% of Patsy Woods Martin focused on the Texas Democratic Party and how we win elections. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote. I hope you'll join Boyd Ritchie and Molly Beth Malcolm, the last 2 chairs of the Texas Democratic Party who've endorsed me. Thank you so much for your hard work, and let's go win some elections.
Great. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, TDP chair candidates, for participating in our Border and South Texas virtual forum, for being a leader in our party, and for throwing your hat in the ring. We look forward to the TDP chair election this Saturday, where the State Democratic Executive Committee, aka SDC, will select one of you to be our leader during the SDC meeting. Viewers, we hope to see y'all who can make it in Austin this Friday, March 28th at Hotel Vegas on East 6th Street for the final official forum, as well as the SDC meeting. Also in Austin on Saturday, March 29th at the UA Local 286 Plumbers and Pipefitters Union Hall on Airport Boulevard. And we want to thank the Hispanic Caucus and its organizations, the Indigenous Peoples Caucus, and the dozens of county Democratic parties from El Paso to Brownsville, from San Antonio to Corpus Christi, and from Eagle Pass to Marfa, who were our co-sponsors, as well as we want to give a thanks to everyone who pre-submitted questions on the online forum. Special thanks to the TDP chair candidates for their efforts and to the TDP staff for helping put this on. And finally, thank you to our viewers for watching us live on YouTube. Please don't forget to click on the subscribe bell for notifications and give this video a like by clicking on the thumbs up. Again, I'm Eric Holguin for the Hispanic Caucus, and on behalf of Kristen Henge and the Indigenous Peoples Caucus, we are signing off. So good night.